that this idea will be carried out by both countries forever. That is our hope. So I would like to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about Malaysia and Thailand, and I will try to answer whatever question that you may ask. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Prime Minister Mahathir. Thank you very much for your excellent talk. I start to receive questions from the floor. I also have several questions that handed in to me a lot earlier in the past few days. Let me start with something rather simple. Well, Prime Minister Mahathir, I would say you have set several of the world records. 22 years as the Prime Minister. I think this is the longest Prime Minister ever, at least that I have ever known. 93 years old, the oldest leader in the world. And I would say, and lastly, I would say you're the most handsome. 93 years old, gentlemen. Well, could you share with us some of your secret formula? What keeps you so healthy and sharp? I'm not sure whether you notice or not. When Prime Minister delivers his speech, he has no note at all. He's been standing there for 20 minutes without any note. I could not do it. So what is your secret formula?
Well, actually, there is no secret formula.
Oh.
I must admit that I do not smoke, I do not drink. I think I escaped some of those diseases caused by smoking or by drinking. And I live a very conservative kind of life. I don't overeat and get too fat. If you get fat, you live a shorter life. You enjoy better, good food and all that, but I think your life will be shortened if you overeat. So those are the three things that I do. Of course, I do some exercise, but otherwise, because I did not suffer from diseases that cannot be cured, I have lived a much longer life than people before me. Also today, surgery is very advanced. When I was a doctor, nobody thinks of opening up the chest because then the lungs will collapse and you will die. But they invented ways of circulating the blood and a kind of machine that artificially ventilate your lungs. They were able to cut up my chest twice, actually 3 times, and I had bypass, but I did survive. A lot of people survive nowadays. When I had my heart operation, this was something new, and I had the operation in Kuala Lumpur. Although they say as Prime Minister I should go to Mayo Clinic and all that, I prefer to be operated in Kuala Lumpur. And now, of course, heart operations are very common. But beyond that, I think it is good to be active. Most people, when they retire, they like to live a sedentary life. They like to sleep a lot. and they don't read and they don't talk with people. When you don't read, you don't write, you don't talk to people, you don't discuss things, your brain also becomes affected. Just like the muscles of the body, if you don't use the muscle, like you sleep all the time, then you become very weak. The strength goes out of the muscles. By the same token, the brain, if you don't use, will also regress. So I like to fight with people. So I have to keep active all the time. I have to answer questions. Among the questions asked is, how do you manage to live so long? I say, don't overeat and make use of your brain. So I think these are something that I believe contributed. Not stopping work after being pensioned off is a very good way to avoid, early death.
Thank you. Let me ask one of my personal question, because you mentioned that you don't drink, you don't smoke, you keep active, you keep working. Well, physically, that is strong. How do you keep them mentally strong? Being a politician must be very stressful. Being a prime minister for 22 years must be very stressful. How do you handle with the stress?
Well, I don't get stressed very much. I believe that I am not stressed. But the doctors told me that your heart is not taking very well. We have to open up your chest. So between not feeling stressed and actually not suffering from disease, there is not always a constant relation. Sometimes you are very stressed, but you can still live a long life. But it's better, of course, not to be stressed. I always tell myself, supposing I'm not around, this thing will happen anyway. So when something happens, you have to accept that it has happened, and you have to adapt to that problem that you face.
Okay. I get a note from my team. This is not a question, but this note has 2 lines. You are always my idol and role model. You are a man of honor, words, integrity, and sacrifice. So this is at least the 2 lines that I received, not the question. But the question is this: during your time as the Prime Minister, those 22 years, what can we learn from you? What is the best decision making that you have made during those 22 years?
I think in a democratic country, it's very important that leaders keep aware of what the people are thinking, what they are feeling, and what they want to be done for them. And you try to accede to their demands as much as possible. Of course, it's not always possible, but wherever you can do the things that the people want you to do, then they will continue to support. But if you behave like some, I was called a dictator, but I'm not. I disclaim that. We have never found any dictator who actually resigns. I resign. So because I resign, I cannot be a dictator. But the thing to do is, of course, to always meet the people, talk to them, shake their hands, and then I think those simple things will make you popular. And in a democratic country, you can be assured that you get the votes during election. I led 5 elections and I won all the 5 with a 2/3 majority.
Well, let me add one more question. On the contrary, if you can turn the clock back during 1981 to year 2003, and if you can go back and correct it, what do you want to correct?
Well, from the very beginning, I told myself I must not be unjust and unfair to people. That is something that I tried to uphold. But something happened with one of the leaders, and I had to take action against him because I believe he has broken the law. And that is something that I regret, because there may be other ways of acting when somebody does something that is wrong. But I prefer to let the law take its own way, and as a result, of course, there was conflict, and there was bad feelings directed at me. Not too bad to affect my popularity. Until I stepped down, there was no campaign to bring me down. I decided to step down because I was there too long. But this problem that I had with one of the leaders keeps on bugging me, making people go against me because they believe I was unjust and unfair.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Malaysia is witnessing various changes in many ways. Your comeback through the election could also be regarded as a kind of reform on governance in Malaysia. Should we expect more reform from you? Where do you desire to take Malaysia to?
Well, though people who were opposed to me when I was Prime Minister demanded that there should be reform, but I saw no necessity for reform because the system seems to be working well. And during elections, people were able to vote, and in most cases, I won. So where should there be a reform if the system is working? And then, of course, I stepped down, and I was succeeded by two other prime ministers. And with the same system, they managed to do things which are bad for the country and which the people do not like. So looking back now, I thought that perhaps I did something wrong. Among the things that I believe I did wrong was, before, in order to develop the country, we need a private sector. And I encouraged the private sector. Of course, some of them succeed, some of them fail. But when they succeed, they were labeled as my cronies.
Oh.
Actually, I didn't know them before, but I learned, I developed relationship with them because they were successful. Now, if you want to help somebody, you must help in a way that he can benefit from it. If you give $1 million to somebody who has not done any big business, the way he manages that $1 million would be not productive. But when I see somebody who is already successful and I give a push, help him to do better, he will most likely succeed. Unfortunately, if you succeed, then you are regarded